I was watching the waitstaff pour $200 glasses of champagne, like it was tap water, when I saw Nathan's fingers go still over his linen napkin. 1 second he's chuckling at a joke from Richard Callaway, the Apex CEO, and the next he's stone quiet. His thumb hovers over his phone like it just delivered a death sentence. I leaned over, pretending to adjust my chair, but I knew that face. I'd seen it once before, when his father passed and he kept it together long enough to deliver the eulogy, only to break down in the parking lot when no one was looking. This was different, though. This wasn't grief. This was insult, hot and sharp, tucked inside a cold-blooded text. The Apex Gala wasn't just some company dinner. It was the damn Super Bowl for people like us. $1,000 per seat. Every major player in the industry suited up like they were auditioning for a Bond film. All pretending we weren't silently judging each other's shoes, watches, and who they were seated next to. And Nathan? Nathan Rourke had earned that seat beside Richard with 7 years of quiet dominance. No ego. No fluff. Just results. And now he looked like someone had sucker punched him in a cathedral. Before I go any further, do me a small favor. If you've ever worked your ass off just to be blindsided by someone who thinks spreadsheets make them God, hit that like button and subscribe. It keeps stories like these alive. And trust me, this one gets brutal. Anyway, I watched him blink once. Then again. He set the phone down, exhaled, and laughed. Not loudly. Not bitterly. Just that kind of laugh a man lets out when the world finally confirms what he's suspected all along. That loyalty means nothing when a VP wants to swing his MBA around like a machete. He didn't say a word. Didn't cause a scene. Just took a sip of his water, and went back to cutting into his fillet like he hadn't just been knifed himself. I couldn't see the message yet, but I felt the shift in him. Like some part of him had just turned off, and another had turned on. A few seats down, Tyler Vaughn, the hotshot VP who looked like his mom still ironed his dress shirts, was chatting up a hedge fund rep, totally oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped. Nathan's whole posture shifted. Not slouched, not stiff. Just silent, like a man who knew exactly how to weaponize calm. And Callaway, mid-sentence, noticed. Something wrong? He asked, his voice low, casual, but laced with the authority of someone used to being the smartest guy in the room. Nathan didn't answer right away. He picked up his phone, tapped it twice, and slid it across the table toward Richard. For a split second, I saw the screen before Callaway turned it. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Details to follow. Return all assets Monday. That was it. That was the message. No signature. No context. Just a one-liner gut punch delivered mid-lobster bisque. Richard stared at it, then slowly set down his champagne. His jaw didn't drop. His eyebrows didn't even flinch. He just nodded once, like a judge reading a guilty verdict he'd seen coming for months. Then, without breaking eye contact with the screen, he muttered, "He did this during my gala?" Nathan, still cool as ever, shrugged. "Guess I was too expensive to fire quietly." Richard didn't answer. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his own phone. And right then I knew. Tyler hadn't just screwed over a guy with tenure. He'd just pissed off the man who writes half the industry's checks. And the funny part? No one else at the table noticed. They were still laughing at some story about quarterly forecasts and yacht club renovations while a slow, invisible bomb had just been armed between 2 glasses of Burgundy that I watched the text land. I saw it hit him in real time. His eyes went flat, like someone turned off the lights behind them. We'd just finished some overpriced kale foam on a cracker they were calling an amuse-bouche when Nathan's phone buzzed again. One look and his entire soul shifted behind the veil of his face. I didn't need to see the screen to know it wasn't good. I've known Nathan for years. He's the type who keeps everything bottled behind a well-pressed suit and a polite nod. But when he leaned back in his chair, just slightly, like something had knocked the wind out of him, and he was pretending it hadn't, I knew. This wasn't just bad. It was betrayal. He tapped the message once. Then again. Didn't flinch. Just stared at it like a man watching his own obituary get printed. Then, God help me, he chuckled. Real low. Real quiet. Like a man who just realized the joke wasn't on him anymore. I leaned closer, whispering, "Everything okay?" He didn't even look at me. Just said, "Depends who you ask." Then he showed me the message. One line. No salutation. No warning. No explanation. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Details to follow. Return all assets Monday. I felt the breath leave my body like someone had yanked it from my chest. And the name at the top? Tyler Vaughn. Of course it was. That preppy, PowerPoint-obsessed junior exec who called Nathan legacy drift in a strategy meeting last month. Like Nathan hadn't been the reason we even had the Apex account in the first place. I blinked. He fired you by text? Nathan nodded, picking up his glass of sparkling water, like it was any other Tuesday and not the night he'd just been publicly executed, at a client gala, at the table of the client he built from scratch. While seated next to the CEO of said client, who was currently texting someone under the table with a face that looked like thunder behind glass. I guess he didn't want to wait till Monday, Nathan muttered. Shame. I already picked out my retirement watch. I could have screamed. Not because he didn't deserve better, he did 100 times over, but because this was so stupidly corporate. So tone-deaf, arrogant, and digital age cruel. A man spends 7 years securing a contract that floats 42% of your revenue. And you can't even give him a phone call? You can't even look him in the eye? I watched the room spin around us. Laughs, handshakes, clinking glasses. None of them realizing someone had just pulled a pin from the grenade under their own banquet table. Nathan checked his phone again, scrolling past the message like it was spam. No severance mentioned, he said calmly, almost like he was noting the weather. That'll be a problem. He wasn't panicking. Wasn't sweating. Just logging mental notes like a man preparing to dismantle a house with a single wrench. That's when I realized. This wasn't going to end with a LinkedIn farewell post and a quiet departure. No. Tyler had turned it personal. And Nathan? Nathan doesn't yell. He calculates. And from the look in his eye, the math had already started. Richard caught it right away. The change in Nathan wasn't loud. It was in the shoulders. The kind of stillness that comes when a man's been gutted and refuses to bleed in public. 1 second he was laughing politely at a story about freight logistics in Singapore, and the next he was quiet. Not withdrawn, just aware. Like something inside him had broken off clean. Richard leaned slightly across the linen tablecloth, eyes narrowing. Everything all right? Nathan didn't answer. He just picked up his phone, tapped it once, and slid it across the table like he was passing the check. Richard looked down at the screen, squinting for a beat before it registered. I watched it hit him like a delayed detonation. His brows didn't shoot up. His lips didn't part. Instead, he slowly, deliberately set down his champagne and stared at the phone like it had just called his mother something vile. He did this during my gala? He asked, the words so quiet they barely registered over the clinking forks and jazz trio in the background. Nathan shrugged. Not performative. Just tired. It's fine. I was already on my way out. Richard looked at him like he'd lost his damn mind. Not anymore, you're not. There was a pause. The kind that makes your skin crawl because you know something seismic just shifted under the table. Even though everyone else is still talking about quarterly margins and private golf clubs like the earth hasn't moved. I don't think I've ever seen Richard angry before. Not really. The man built Apex on steel nerves and polished diplomacy. But this wasn't anger. This was offended. And not on behalf of some abstract business principle, but on behalf of Nathan. 7 years, Richard muttered, mostly to himself. He fires you by text. At my table. At my event. I could see the heat bloom under his collar. He took the phone again and reread the message like he was trying to memorize it. Then he pulled out his own device and started typing, thumbs swift, mechanical. There wasn't a single ounce of panic in his movement. It was surgical. Dangerous. Nathan didn't even look up. There's a clause in the Apex contract about primary liaison changes. 30 days notice required. Richard paused. Clause 12 sub A, he said without looking. Nathan blinked. You remember it? I wrote it, Richard replied, then turned to glance across the ballroom toward Tyler, who was still yucking it up with someone from Goldman Sachs, completely unaware he'd just flipped a kill switch on his own career. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't about a text. This wasn't about HR protocol or even corporate etiquette. This was about respect. And Tyler Vaughn had just pissed in the wrong man's pool. Richard didn't yell. He didn't storm off or flip a table, or march over to Tyler like some puffed-up executive cliché. That would have been too loud. Too reactive. No, he went quiet. A surgical kind of quiet. The kind that said, "I've killed companies for less than this." His fingers moved fast, texting under the table like he was playing chess on a 5-minute clock. I leaned just enough to catch the preview. One to his GC, another to the CFO. No drama. Just clear signals going out like quiet flares before an airstrike. Meanwhile, laughter rippled through the room around us. Some VP's wife telling a story about her dog's Instagram sponsorships, I think. The jazz trio had started a mellow version of Fly Me to the Moon. And you'd never know, watching from the outside, that the ground beneath Redden and Marsh's entire Apex account was starting to buckle. Richard lifted the phone to his ear and made a quick call under the table, voice low measured. They just fired their only credible liaison mid-contract, he said, almost like he was ordering a sandwich. Flag it. I watched Nathan pull out his own phone, no longer the stunned victim of a corporate backstab, but something colder. Sharper. The man who built the Apex account brick by brick was now flipping through his files like a lawyer prepping for trial. He opened a folder labeled Apex_Redden_Messy_updated and scrolled fast, so fast I knew he already knew where to look. His thumb stopped on a clause highlighted in yellow. I saw it over his shoulder. Clause 12A. He didn't say anything. Just turned the screen to show me. Any change in primary liaison without 30-day notice shall be considered a breach of exclusivity protections, subject to contract suspension or full termination. I looked up at him and saw something different. Not hurt. Not insult. Calculated intent. He wasn't going to rant. He wasn't going to post some passive-aggressive goodbye on LinkedIn, or beg for dignity in a conference room come Monday. No, Nathan was going to let the contract bleed them out. He closed the document, locked his screen, and took a long sip of water. His hands were steady, his breathing calm. But his eyes? His eyes were already 1,000 miles ahead. Across the room, Tyler laughed a little too hard at his own joke. No idea he'd just triggered a clause that could vaporize the very deal he was trying to steal credit for. Richard hung up the call. No expression. No comment. Just nodded once at Nathan like a silent pact had been made. I don't think either of them needed to say what came next. Nathan leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking around the ballroom, cataloging everyone at that table. He wasn't just memorizing the room. He was remembering who watched it happen, and who stayed quiet. The first ember of revenge wasn't loud. It didn't come with a speech or a slammed door. It came in the form of two men, quietly reading a contract. Nathan didn't rush. That was the unnerving part. He moved like a man slicing a wire, not pulling a trigger. Deliberate. Precise. The kind of calm that makes people underestimate you right before they realize you've already won. He scrolled to the top of the contract PDF and searched Clause 12A, like he was looking up a weather report. I watched him skim the language again, even though I knew damn well he had it memorized. Nathan never forgot the fine print. He was the kind of guy who remembered handshake terms from 8 fiscal quarters ago, down to the punctuation. He leaned in slightly toward Richard, voice low but firm. Clause 12 sub A. That text activated it. Richard's head turned a fraction, just enough to show he'd heard. He didn't look surprised. Just confirmed. Like he'd been hoping Nathan would say it out loud. Thought so, Richard murmured, eyes already on his phone again. He wasn't texting Tyler yet. He was drafting something better. Something legal. Something final. You could feel the stakes shift. This wasn't just an ugly HR mishap or a rogue VP with too much Red Bull in his bloodstream. This was contractual breach. An opening clause violation that, if pressed, could void Redden and Marsh's exclusivity with Apex. 42% of R&M's revenue. Gone. Just like that. And all because Tyler Vaughn couldn't keep his itchy little power fingers off the damn send button. Nathan sat back in his chair again, this time not out of shock, but posture. Presence. Authority he didn't need to announce. He had transformed in the span of 15 minutes from expendable employee to the one man in the room holding the live wire. And letting everyone else wonder how close they were to getting fried. The champagne flute sat untouched in front of him. The lobster course had arrived. No one at the table noticed the quiet war forming between two seats. Everyone was still giggling about quarterly bonuses and faux modest Rolex stories while Richard tapped out a message that would hit harder than any boardroom screaming match. Nathan turned to me, voice barely above a whisper. "You know what Clause 12 also does?" he asked. I shook my head. "It lets Apex walk away without penalty. No buyout. No notice. Just done." It landed like a bullet. Not with noise, but with weight. He didn't smirk. Didn't look for validation. He just exhaled like a man who had finally found the pressure point in the chest of the beast that tried to swallow him. His silence wasn't retreat anymore. It was positioning. A loaded chamber waiting for the trigger. A fact. Richard looked up, read Nathan's face one more time and nodded. Just once. He started typing again. And this time, the name at the top of the screen? Tyler Vaughn. Richard's thumb hovered over the keyboard for a second longer than usual, as if calibrating the weight of each word. Then, without flourish or warning, he tapped send. "Looks like you just voided our contract too. See you in court." 14 words. Polite, surgical, and fatal. The message hit like a silent gunshot. Not dramatic, not loud, but irreversible. You could almost feel the tectonic shift under the ballroom carpet. Even if no one else had a clue what had just detonated, Richard didn't flinch. He didn't gloat. He just set his phone face down and returned to his lobster like he'd just texted someone about a dry cleaning mishap. A few seconds later, his phone buzzed again. Tyler Vaughn. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer. Not even a glance. Just let the question hang in the void where Tyler's future used to be. Instead, Richard opened his inbox. Clicked compose. No hesitation. To CEO at reddenmarsh.com cc. Apex Legal Team. Subject. Immediate suspension of contractual obligations. Breach triggered. Body. Per Clause 12A of the Apex Redden Agreement, your recent internal decision constitutes a breach of exclusivity. Effective immediately, we are suspending all contractual obligations pending legal review. Please direct all further correspondence through counsel. He hit send with a fingertip so calm, you'd think he was RSVPing to a fundraiser. I looked over at Nathan. Nothing had changed in his expression. No smagnis. No sigh of relief. Just the same quiet, clinical composure. Like he was watching a building he'd once lived in get demolished, knowing damn well he'd packed his bags weeks ago. That's the thing about Nathan. His revenge was never going to be dramatic. It was going to be correct. And that's what made it so lethal. He wasn't yelling across offices or rage-posting cryptic messages on Slack. He didn't need to. He let the contract do it for him. Across the room, Tyler was still buried in conversation with some finance bro, oblivious to the nuclear blast that had just gone off in his inbox. He had no idea that his little one-line termination had triggered a domino collapse that could rip $80 million out of his company's pipeline. And Nathan? He didn't even look at him. Didn't need to. He just took another sip of water, pulled out his phone, and opened a job offer draft from a competitor that had been sitting in his inbox for 6 days. Subject line. Still interested? His finger hovered over the reply button, and he smiled, just barely. Monday hit like a sledgehammer wrapped in legalese. At 8:14 a.m., every Redden and Marsh department head received the same urgent directive. All Apex-related communications frozen until further notice. Legal escalation in progress. Stand by for instruction. No one had context. Not yet. But panic spreads faster than truth in a corporate chain of command. And by 9 a.m., the office was a human ant farm. Emails flying, Slack threads exploding. Assistants on the verge of tears as compliance tore through inboxes like forensic archaeologists. Legal summoned everyone into a war room. Tyler showed up late, coffee in hand, unshaven like he'd had a rough Sunday, and from the look in his eyes he had. He tried to play it cool. Blamed HR for mismanaging offboarding procedures. Tried spinning the text as a placeholder for formal notice. Said he'd meant to follow up with documentation that somehow got caught in filters. It didn't work. The contract was too clean. Too clear. Clause 12, A wasn't ambiguous. It was spelled out in bold. Any unilateral change to primary liaison without 30 days, written notice constitutes a breach. Tyler had fired the liaison, via text in public without notice, in front of the client CEO. And now the company's golden goose had flown off with the nest egg. The CFO looked ready to vomit. Compliance wanted paper trails. PR was already triaging what they were calling a potential client-side optics emergency. Meanwhile, IT was disabling Tyler's admin access to deal dashboards, quietly but definitively. While the circus spun itself into a procedural nightmare, Nathan was nowhere near the building. He was on his back porch, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug that said Quarterly Warrior, reading news alerts about Redden and Marsh's stock taking a minor hit following unverified client turbulence. He didn't smile, didn't gloat, just scrolled. Then his phone buzzed. LinkedIn new message from Sasha Renner, Managing Director, Linthorn Group. Saw the Apex drama. Heard you were the glue there. We've got a mess and need grown-ups. Consulting role, executive level. You choose the terms. Interested. Nathan stared at it for a second, then clicked over to his calendar. He had time. He typed a response. Available for a call after 2 p.m. today. NDA first. He hit send, stood up, stretched, and walked back inside like it was just another Monday. No fireworks. No speeches. Just a man whose silence had finally become louder than Tyler Vaughn's entire career. WY Tuesday morning. The internal bleeding had gone viral. Figuratively, then literally. Someone leaked the text. Not the one Nathan got. The one Richard sent. 14 words, screen-capped and circulating across Slack channels like wildfire. Looks like you just voided our contract too. See you in court. It was forwarded, memed, dissected. Someone printed it and taped it over the espresso machine in the marketing lounge. Investors noticed. They always do. By 10:30 a.m., someone on the board had called an urgent alignment session, which was code for who the hell let Tyler Vaughn press the detonate button. Shares dipped 3 points by lunch. Not catastrophic, but noticeable. The kind of wobble that gets whispered about on trading floors and triggers careful worded. We remain committed to client continuity. Press statements from the PR interns who were definitely not paid enough for this. Inside Redden and Marsh, it was a war zone of open laptops and closed doors. Resignation rumors swirled. People tiptoed past the HR suite like it was radioactive. Slack threads turned passive-aggressive, then just aggressive. One manager posted, FYI, check clause 12, A if you want to sleep tonight. It got 47 emoji reactions in under 10 minutes, none of them smiley. Tyler? He got pulled into an emergency boardroom session so fast he didn't have time to put on a tie. He looked like someone had dumped cold water down the back of his shirt, rumpled, unshaven, clammy. The guy who swaggered into Apex's gala like a discount Zuckerberg now sat at the long end of the table trying to spin the narrative like it was some internal restructuring miscommunication. Legal wasn't buying it. Finance was livid. PR wouldn't even look at him. Meanwhile, Nathan's phone rang. A known number. But the area code was familiar. He answered calmly, knowing exactly who it would be. Mr. Rourke, said a strained voice on the other end. This is Greg Kellerman, CEO of Redden and Marsh. Nathan didn't respond. Greg cleared his throat, trying again. I just, wanted to understand exactly what happened at the Apex event. Nathan kept it simple. Your VP fired me. By text. While I was seated next to your cash cow. The silence that followed could have cracked concrete. Then quietly. Is there anything we can do to fix this? Nathan leaned against his kitchen counter, watching steam curl off the surface of his second cup of coffee. Same mug. Same porch. Same quiet smirk just threatening to break across his face, but never quite forming. There is, he said, voice flat. Start by reading your own contracts. Greg started to say something, but Nathan cut him off. And maybe, he added, read your people. Before they burn down the house they think they own. He hung up before the CEO could respond. Then he silenced his phone, grabbed his jacket, and stepped outside. Because some men get their revenge in court. Others? They let the paperwork do the screaming. 1 week. That's how long it took for the clause Tyler hadn't read to carve his name off the brass plaque outside the boardroom. By Thursday morning, his office was boxed up by interns pretending not to smirk. HR walked him out through the back entrance, where a security guard held the door without saying a word. No farewell speech. No, we wish him well in his future endeavors. Just a quiet removal, the kind reserved for people who cost the company 8 figures and made the CEO personally dial the man they'd discarded like expired inventory. The official statement read leadership realignment. Internally, everyone knew it was a mercy kill. That same day, Apex made their own announcement. A press release, elegant and surgical, blasted across every relevant outlet in the industry. Apex International is proud to continue its commitment to innovation by entering a strategic partnership with a new advisory firm led by Nathan Rourke. We value continuity, experience, and professional discretion in all our relationships moving forward. The dig was subtle, professional, but lethal. Continuity meant we don't drop our anchors mid-sale. Experience meant we prefer people who've survived more than one budget cycle. And professional discretion? That was a throat punch in a silk glove, custom-stitched with Tyler's initials. The firm Nathan launched? Clean, nimble, already stacked with talent Tyler had once dismissed as cost-inefficient. Within 72 hours, 2 other clients quietly reached out. Word travels fast when your exit isn't a tantrum, but a case study in quiet revenge. By Friday night, Nathan sat alone in a low-lit bar near the harbor. No entourage. No champagne flutes or social media victory laps. Just a glass of scotch, neat, and a tired smirk reserved for men who didn't need applause to know they'd won. His phone buzzed once. A message. From Richard. Subject. Thank you. Message. You didn't burn the bridge. They blew it up with a text. We just watched it fall. Nathan stared at the screen for a moment. Let it sit. Then he lifted his glass in a slow, silent toast, more to himself than anyone else, and took a long sip. Outside, the world went on. The gala lights had dimmed. The headlines would fade. But somewhere in a half-empty server room at Redden and Marsh, Clause 12A, still burned quietly in a PDF file, glowing like a warning flare no one there would ever ignore again. Not because of its wording, but because of the man who used it like a scalpel.